of subscribing to the kind of careerist policies that our current government enshrined just as well as Thatcher did.
Young people, as we were then, looked outwards and really thought that we could change the world. We wrote personally to the White House and to the President, and we got replies. We thought we were talking sense, really, when we knocked on the door of Number 10 to hand in yet another petition. But all that's gone. The only thing that really fires up students today is their own affairs. They're not really interested in the world. They're interested in their world.
But can we really blame them? Look at the drivel they had to listen to when they were growing up. Political correctness. All that rubbish from Brussels. All those new rights that we'd done without for thousands of years and were suddenly inalienable. A new TV station for the Welsh. All those pointy-faced local councillors policing everything around us. More and more bloody nonsense. Little men and little women in council offices working out new ways in which we can offend each other. Leftovers of the loony left.
Councillors are nothing more than sort of local busybodies. You know, they would be the neighbour from hell complaining, only they've elevated it to a sort of politics. They're the lowest rung of the party political ladder. They're the loudmouths and the activists who think they're creating world revolution by stopping a hot cross bun or by flying the EU flag only and not the Union Jack or the Jacks, which drives the local people mad. They're just doing it to be provocative like your neighbour would by snipping the ear off your topiary hedge, a rabbit or something, you know.
Everyday swearing is marvellous. I think there should be more swearing all the time, frankly. You know, a well-timed swear word is a terrific thing, and it doesn't mean that you lack vocabulary. When you lack a vocabulary, when you go, do you know what I mean? Thing is, at the end of the day, basically, like literally, do you know what I mean? That's bad language, in my opinion, not bollocks to you, you twat.
The women love it, you know. And I'd much rather have a 90% female audience because you get better laughs and you can be much ruder.
And then there's our middle-class paranoia about our kids. Today we're so obsessed with hygiene that all our kids have allergies. So obsessed with their safety that they have to go to school in an armoured car. And now there's the greatest evil of them all, the internet.
Now these are fully dressed children, being children, playing Mary, Joseph and the donkey. You know, what is going on there if we're by extension, since paedophiles no doubt looking at children, we should ban children from the streets, or they should go around in burqas like women under the Taliban.
If I was to send my children up to Clapham Common now, I bet you I'd be more worried about some mad paedophile taking them away than I would be about them not looking properly when they went across the zebra and being knocked down, and that's a far more likely scenario.
Yes, political correctness is something that, I mean, you're talking to the man who had a hit record in 1988 with a group called Morris Malcolm Major, a song called Stutter Rap. You know, it's hard. You know, rapping, it's my bread and butter, but it's hard to rap when you're born with a...
Come on, man. Stammer!
So, you know, I've not always been Mr. Politically correct.
When the vocals start, and I'm down and out, and I'm down on my...
And so sick was everyone of the loony left that they bounced all the way over to the loony right.
During the lifetime of the next Conservative government, we shall replace the present system of rates with a different...
A chance to sort out the unions and the lefties and the immigrants and the scroungers. Who would have believed that the guys who sang Ain't Gonna Work on Maggie's Farm No More would end up electing her?
There'd been a moment on television when she was being filmed patronising the people who lived in a council house somewhere. And as she came out, some cameraman had shouted something like, "Are you going to be the first woman Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher?" And she came over and she bent down to the camera and in that most patronising voice of hers said, "Not only am I going to be the first woman Prime Minister, I'm going to be the first Prime Minister with a science degree." And then she looked straight into the camera and she said, "Got that?"
Which I must point out to you in all modesty is that it would be the first person in Number 10 Downing Street to have a science degree. Got it?
And I just thought nobody in this country is going to do anything that would enable her to become Prime Minister. And then, of course, I was driving home a few days later, listening to the results coming in, and I actually thought, for the first time, I feel like a stranger in my own country. Because she was like Manchester United, you know what I mean? In that you could... It was quite clearly the right thing to do was to hate her unswervingly. and it meant that your life was based on a negative. As I'm afraid being a Liverpool supporter these days is, all you've got left in life is to hate Manchester United, because Liverpool aren't going to win anything.
Things, to coin a phrase, could only get better.
No more broken promises. I say to the Tories, enough is enough.
When the results of the first Blair election were coming through, there was a kind of public expression of tentative joy, but I felt within weeks, really, and certainly feel now incredibly betrayed. And I wouldn't know if there was a general election next week. I actually wouldn't know who to vote for.
With Blair and all these trendy Wendy's destroying education, I want to kill them. I just want to kill them. And every time he opens, the Des O'Connor bloody Polytechnic of shoplifting and calls it a university, I just want to blow his head off.
Ever since he became leader of the Labour Party, he's really wound me up intolerably with his kind of intense sincerity. And, when I saw him walking around in black Levi's, I burnt mine. That was the point at which I wanted to disassociate myself lock, stock and barrel from my own generation. He's the air guitarist of political rhetoric, with his Fender Strat fiddling away in front of the mirror. And he's a perfect example of the kind of banalisation of our culture. I do not see Tony picking up a book. I think Tony's big on PlayStation. I think he's big on the MP3. I think he's got piercings, and I think we should see them. I think he's got piercings of mass destruction hidden about his body.
Well, politicians, they're so bland, they're all the same, aren't they? There used to be a time when I was a child, there was the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Party, as it was then. And one had a certain idea of what they stood for. But now, the Labour Party is the same as the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is more left-wing than Labour, or doesn't know what it is. There's no left anymore.
It is my generation of grumpy old men who are to blame, because for years we have been complaining about politicians who have other jobs, politicians who line their pockets, politicians who have one foot in private industry or agriculture and only part-time as members of Parliament, constituency MPs. We've complained about that breed for so long that we've actually killed them. They've gone. We now have full-time politicians, and they're much, much worse than the ones that were lining their pockets in the city, in agriculture or in industry.
But while politicians came and politicians went, the one thing we could rely on absolutely was our beloved royal family. The envy of the world, the apogee of good manners and good taste. Today, our grumpies look at the Windsors and squirm with embarrassment at their irredeemable middle-class naffness. That might be just about acceptable, if only they kept their views to themselves.
We should respect our past and understand our past and understand how we've got to where we are. But there is a sense in which the royal family keeps us looking backwards rather than forwards. You can see that in Charles's taste in architecture. I use the word taste loosely. He has no taste in architecture whatsoever. No problem with that, except that he has a huge amount to say and a huge amount of influence, and he has stopped some absolutely stunning projects in London. One of the greatest architects who ever lived wanted to do a building in London. Somebody wanted to pay for it, but Charles didn't like it because it wasn't Doric pillars and neoclassical. It didn't look like Buckingham Palace, It's a scandal how many great schemes have been stopped by him,
So, not many of our grumpies are big on patriotism or waving the Union Jack. Not given to running around boasting about what a great nation we are. Except, of course, when we come under attack from our other deep-seated and long-term irritant, Johnny Foreigner.
I had this conversation with a French girl recently, and she said that the reason the French didn't like the Americans was that because before America was the major world power, it was the French. And there was a sort of brief pause while I picked myself up off the floor. And I said, look, I really don't care about which country was more powerful than another, but it was Britain, OK? It was Britain, so don't say it was France, because it was Britain. And she's going, oh, no, France had this empire across the whole of North Africa. Okay, well, empires are not something to be particularly proud of, But our empire was much bigger than your empire. Your empire was all desert. I mean, now you're India, Canada, Australia, or Hong Kong. I mean, on the British Empire, the sun never set, and sort of, Union Jack tattoos were springing back out of my arms, whilst Land of Hope and Glory was sort of playing in the background.
So, 35 years after androgynous hippies sang tunefully about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, when the moon was in the 7th house and Jupiter aligned with Mars, the news is full of wars in far-off places. We hate the Prime Minister, we hate his recent predecessors, and we'll no doubt hate whoever is coming next. The NHS is on the critical list, public transport is off the rails, it's all gone to hell. Our kids don't seem to know, and if they do, don't seem to care. And whenever we turn on the telly, we see this.
Who goes? You decide. To vote Alex, call Jay.
Just this sort of incessant, rating sort of nerves all the time. So somebody gets loads of ratings because they get a load of complete bozos in a sort of house and watch them trying to sort of tear each other apart, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon.
And, of course, there are, as I like to call them, the Camden adenoidals sitting around, planning this really good culture. And we've got a ratings group and a focus group. We've all come together and what would be a really, really good thing to have on television, right, is get people who can't cut up their own food wandering around in a sort of laboratory rat thing that's really, really funny. We can laugh because it's postmodern, you know what I mean? It's really, really funny that they're all completely backward and stupid and end up hating each other because we get them drunk as well, right? We do it for weeks on end, and people who've been to university and have had good educations, they're going to say it's really good television because it's really, really good.
I get invited to do the silliest things. I mean, in the past couple of weeks, I was asked to take part in a programme in which I had to go to some kind of classes to learn how to move and, as far as possible, think like a woman.